So this is going to be a video we're doing here. Before I get started, I want to introduce my assistant professor. Look at the camera. This is the third time I've tried to film this. He was really good on the last one. All of our dogs are named after movie stars. We've got Oscar, who's 15 and not doing very well. We had Gable for Clark Gable. We had Cooper for Gary Cooper. Those guys are gone now. This is Bogart. And depending on the day of the week, we call him Bo every day. Sometimes I call him Bo Cephas, Bo Jangles, Bo Regard, but officially he's Bogart. Look at the camera there for Humphrey Bogart. And he'll show up probably in lots of my videos. And for the record, this is not my bedroom. I would never have some silly looking room with a butterfly on the wall. This is the guest bedroom, obviously designed by my wife or set up by my wife and my daughter. But anyway, we're going to get our lecture started here. This is going to be a little bit awkward. I'm running into some technical difficulties here. The title of the lecture, and remember, you're going to turn this in for notebook grade. Title of the lecture is money market graph versus the loanable funds graph. And we're going to talk about both graphs in detail. I'm going to talk to you about how the lines shift and all that. And we're going to, I'm going to give you a homework assignment, probably with some, 5 to 10 scenarios where I give you a scenario and you have to figure out which graph it is and which line moves and show the difference there. This is just to make sure you understand the two graphs. Anyway, having a little bit of difficulty here. I got a dry erase board and I wrote on it, but I have no idea how to deal with this, how it's showing up backwards on the video here. I feel like I took an IQ test somehow and failed it. There ought to be some easy way to figure this out, but I do not know what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to text you. This is going to be, again, a shambles. This is what we're going to call Darter engineering here, or redneck engineering here, where I'm going to send you these two pictures and tell you to insert them into the lecture. Anyway, so what we're going to do, at this point, I guess I probably will have already sent you the two pictures. What you're going to do on the front side of your paper is you're going to take that picture and you're going to totally correctly label the money market graph. So go ahead and do that right now. You probably want to pause the video and go back and look at the pictures I sent you. Okay, so unpause the video here. And I'm going to be looking here at this graph here. All right, so this is the money market graph. What goes here is the nominal interest rate. Goes on the left, on the bottom is the quantity of money, not quantity of money market, quantity of money. The MS line, and you might want to put in parentheses, stands for money supply. It is a straight line. And then the MD line stands for money demand. And what the RE stands for on the left is the rate at equilibrium, the nominal interest rate at equilibrium, and at the bottom is quantity at equilibrium. Now we've done both of these graphs we're going to be learning today. We've done both of them, but what we need to do here is we're going to, we never did this before spring break, okay? And by the way, as far as our timing, we're in great shape. I pushed you guys very hard to finish Unit 4 the Thursday before break. It was one of the smartest things I've ever done in my life, and I didn't do it knowing that we weren't coming back. I did it just because, I'm ambitious. And luckily for you and luckily for me, I was, because we got a lot of this done. It's now we're getting a review while a lot of teachers are, still doing new stuff. I do have about a week's worth of new stuff we're going to do. All right, now, so anyway, write this. You've got this on your paper. So underneath this is going to be on the front page of your notes. Let's talk about shifters, okay? Now, so the money demand line, I tell kids, is the line I have spent the least amount of time on in my 6 years teaching AP macro. It's probably the most confusing line of any of the graphs for kids to understand. Now I'm looking at my graph down here, which looks perfectly normal to me, but it'll look backwards if I put it up here so you can see it. So you should be looking at the graph written on your paper. That money demand line, here's things that is the demand for M1, which is cash, checking accounts, traveler's checks. Now we're in the middle of, let me see. In many ways, I guess this is way worse than 9/11, what we're going through now. the whole coronavirus deal here. This is worse. What a lot of people are doing, they're worried that they're eventually not going to be able to go to the bank. Banks are now closing their lobbies, making you go through the drive-through. So because people are worried they're going to be stuck at home, they're not going to be able, they're worried that things are going to get worse. I'm pretty optimistic that things are going to get better, but I think we're going to be stuck in our houses for a while. So the deal is, what should be happening right now is the demand for money should be going up. Because people are like, what if I need to go to the bank and the bank's closed, or there's roadblocks or something? Or the power goes out, which hopefully, none of that's ever going to happen. So the deal is, the demand for money should be going up, and I want you to see what happens here when that line moves. So if the demand for money was going to go up, that demand line would shift to the right. It shifts to the right like this. And so MD would become MD1, and then the new line would be MD2. You have to draw the arrow. You have to draw the arrow. And then what you have is RE1. That's what the rate was. And now you have RE2. So if the demand for money goes up, the nominal interest rate goes up. And that theoretically should be happening in this country. It's not, and I'll get into why that's not. That's in a few minutes here. But that's how the demand for money goes up. So, ignoring this crisis, let's forget about the crisis here. If the economy is booming, like if we were looking at the ADSRAS graph, if demand was going up in the country, if people were spending more money, they'd need more money, they'd need more cash, they'd need more checking accounts. If people are optimistic, the economy is doing good, they want to spend more money, the demand for money is going to go up. And then the opposite is going to happen. If people think the economy is going to go down, the demand for money would go down. Okay, now do not confuse that with what's going on right now. Okay, the demand for money is probably going up right now, even at the same time that the economy is going down. But the reason that is people are worried they may not be able to get to the bank. Okay, so that money demand line there, remember in the scenarios I gave you before, if something happened with ATMs, if ATMs were more available, demand for money would go down. Remember the stupid example I gave a couple of my classes in their essays. If they invented an app that would allow you to save, to print money off your cell phone, print cash, the demand for money would go down. So anyway, anything that's going to have to do with people needing more money in their checking accounts or more cash on hand, or they're taking more vacations and wanting to carry traveler's checks with them, that would cause the demand for money to go up. Any other thing, the opposite of that makes money less likely to get, or something like that would affect it differently. All right, I may have just said something confusing there. I may need to think about that. All right, now let's talk about the other line. The other line is money supply line, and as I told you in the past, only one entity can affect the money supply line, and that is the Fed. That is the Fed. And so let's go over their policy. So write down in your notes, monetary policy. Now remember what the U.S. government does, Congress and the president and all that, that's fiscal policy. What the Federal Reserve does is monetary policy. But by the way, a little aside here, the Treasury and the Federal Reserve right now are working in concert together. This is very unusual. It was not this scary after 9/11. It really wasn't. And you guys were either not born or you were very young. What happened, I think you weren't born, correct? You guys weren't born. The people were terrified. I know you think I'm a billion years old. I was not around for Pearl Harbor. But anyway, which was the other big scary time in American history. All right, so the money supply line. Here's what the Fed can do. So you're going to make a little chart. However you want to do it, fine. Number one thing the Fed can do is increase or decrease the reserve ratio. If they increase the reserve ratio, that is going to cause the money supply to shift to the left. Okay? That's going to be a decrease in the money supply. So however you do your chart, you need to write this down and you need to memorize this. A decrease in the reserve ratio would cause the money supply to increase. So just think about what happens if the Federal Reserve says, hey, banks, instead of keeping 10%, you only need to keep 5%. they have decreased the reserve ratio. Banks are going to try and loan out the rest of that money in normal times. What's going to happen is the money supply is going to increase. And if you plot that out, you'll see that will cause the interest rate to go down. So the first thing they can do is increase or decrease the reserve ratio. The second thing is increase or decrease the discount rate. If they increase the discount rate, remember that's the rate at which banks borrow from the Fed. If they increase the discount rate, banks are going to borrow less, decreasing the money supply. MS goes to the left. If they decrease the discount rate, banks are going to borrow more, causing the line to shift to the right. The last thing is open market operations, which is the buying or selling of T-bills. And right now, the Fed is buying every T-bill they can find. And this, for the first time in my lifetime, the Federal Reserve is actually buying corporate bonds too, which is unusual. The Federal Reserve is doing everything they can right now to increase the money supply. So that's why I told you, even though the money demand is probably going up because people want to have more money, I do have some money on the side, and I'm not above doing some stuff. It's not shady. I wouldn't say shady, but was a trained corporate money manager. I haven't done anything illegal, I promise you, but I have moved some money around. I listened to Clark Howard the other day, and he was giving some advice on things you ought to do, and I took his advice. I've moved some money around to try and be in better position because of there being a possible financial crisis. But anyway, the third thing is the buying and the selling of T-bills. So if they bought T-bills, remember the mnemonic device: buy big, sell small. Write that on your set of notes. If the Fed buys T-bills, the money supply shifts to the right. As it shifts to the right, the money supply gets bigger, causing interest rates to go down. And that's exactly what the Fed's doing now. So you have money demand, I would think, going up. At the same time, the money supply is going to the right, which is also an increase. The Fed's trying to counteract people's desire to hoard cash in case of a crisis. So the selling of T-bills, buy big, sell small, selling of T-bills would cause the thing to shift to the left. Okay? So I think at this point, to make my YouTube videos small, we're going to call this part 1, and we're going to be done with this front side of your page. I want you to flip over to the back side and go ahead and look for that other graphic I should have sent you of the loanable funds graph, and put that on the back side of your paper.